So here's my internal Active Directory DNS. I've got a single domain controller, DC1, and we're connected to that guy. We're looking at the forward lookup zones. So my internal Active Directory namespace is interface.local. And you can see there I've got a forward lookup zone called interface.local. And if we expand that, you'll see that we've got all of the typical DNS records. I've got A records out there for my existing infrastructure. I've got SRV records for my domain controllers out there and things like that. So this is all well and good, but my SIP domain in Lync is going to be my public website namespace, or my public namespace rather. So it's not interface.local. That's a non-routable domain on the internet. My namespace is interface.ttlabs.com out on the internet. So I need to be able to add that namespace to my internal DNS because my end users need to be able to reference the Lync infrastructure at that namespace. So for example, if I'm opening the meeting URL to join a web conference from the internal network, I need to be able to go to a URL at interface.ttlabs.com that resolves to an internal IP like 192.168.3.30 or 40 or something like that. If this was the public DNS, obviously those records would be resolving to external IPs and that wouldn't be any good. So what we want to do is implement split DNS. So in order to implement split DNS, you have to create a zone in your internal DNS for your external namespace. To do that here, what I'm going to say is I'm going to right click on forward lookup zones. I'm going to create a new zone. I'm going to go ahead and create a primary zone here and I'll store it in Active Directory. So if I had multiple DNS servers and AD with Active Directory integrated zones, this information would get replicated to those guys as well. So there's that option there. So we'll replicate it to everybody. And the zone name is going to be interface.ttlabs.com. And I'm basically going to be manually creating these records. So I don't even need to allow dynamic updates for this zone. So it's not part of my Active Directory. And obviously, if you have a split type of setup where the AD people in your organization are separated from the messaging team or the unified communications team where Lync and Exchange sit, you might need to get an Active Directory person to help you with this. Also, you might already have a setup to where this is your internal namespace. You might not have to do this at all. That's part of your discovery process before you get into installing your Lync infrastructure. So from there, once I'm ready to deploy my infrastructure, I would just come in here and create A records. Now I don't need to really do that yet. First, I want to stand up my Lync servers. But you do need to make sure that you consult with your infrastructure people. There are some implications when implementing split DNS. For example, you might have a www record out on the internet that's hosted externally. So you would need to replace those records here as well because this zone will now be authoritative for any internal user querying the DNS server. That's the process of creating your internal zone for your external namespace and implementing split DNS.